Okay, I'm making this video to help you install the digital conversion kit for the 539B and 539C tube tester. This isn't a step-by-step instruction video. This is a video just to give you some assistance with the written directions, because that's what you're going to need to follow. And I'll briefly go over a few things. First thing you want to do is make sure all the parts are there. The bias meter in the plate, the AC digital meter, the power supply board, which is this. Then what else we have here? Two standoff spacers, which are going to be these, with 632 nuts and washers, which are these. And they're not going to be lock washers, they're going to be just regular washers. And 440 machine screws with nuts and lock washers, and one 10-inch piece of wire which you're going to need to hook up your AC meter. And so I will try to make this as brief as possible and as clear as possible. This is not the final version of the directions I'm going to send, and the ones I'm going to send are not going to be on paper. It's going to be a PDF file you'll have to get on your computer or phone, because they're going to include a lot more pictures than are in the original directions. There won't be a whole lot of editing to the directions. They're well written already, but I think a few more pictures will help explain some of the connections on here and make it just a little bit easier for you to hook these up. It's really quite easy. For example, here's where the power supply board is going to go on your tube tester. And you'll see in the directions, you remove the two nuts and put the power supply board on there. Okay, well, it's not the next step, but the next thing I'm going to show you is to unsolder the red and green wire coming from the bias switch on the front of the tester. Let's see what that switch is. That is the bias volts and the VR volts, the switch right there. Remove these two wires, because the blue and the white wire from the bias meter are going to be soldered there. So let me remove those, and we'll see what the next thing is. Okay, the next step I'll show you is step 5. It says locate the yellow or white wire that goes from the bias switch up to the component board and either remove it from the resistor terminal. Use caution not to damage the precision resistors or cut it off at the board end. Trim back the insulation and apply a little solder to tin the exposed stranded wire. Okay, let me show you that wire. This is yellow or white. The testers I have done, they're all yellow and white wires. It's this yellow and white wire right here. Let's see if I can get it's this one right here, which connects right here at the junction of these two resistors. One is it's a 40K, I believe. Hard for me to read it from here. One's a 40K and the other one looks like 9900. So the yellow and white wire that connects right here on the board, you just need to snip it off. And then we're going to solder that. So let me snip that off and get it ready to solder. Okay, you can see I snipped it off. I left some dangling down so I could show you where it was snipped off at. Probably better off snipping it closer to the board. And I bared the wire here, and luckily this is already pre-tinned wire. They call it top coat wire, so you don't have to pre-tin this one. And step 6, now loop the wire, not the wife, and solder the end as shown to the bias switch. So what it's doing is looping from here over to where the blue and white wire connect. So to the left, past this one to this one. And the blue and white wire is right here. So I am going to loop this wire over and connect it to where there's actually space there where the blue and white wire connects, and I'm just going to solder it in right there. Okay, completed that. Now I brought this yellow and white wire around the back of this connector here to make sure that I didn't get it anywhere near as far away from that nut that's right there. You got to make sure no bare wire or the solder joint isn't too big where it's touching that nut. And the blue and white wire that it connects to, the lug, comes up here and it actually goes to the 40K, this one right here, which is the 40K resistor, the other side of it. So the yellow and white wire is here, and you connect it to where the 40K here, the blue and white wire goes down to the switch right there. You just loop that wire over and you solder it on right there. It's pretty simple. Little tight working space, and just make sure you don't burn any of the other wires with your soldering iron. And again, keep the solder and the wire away from that nut you see down in there. You do not want that touching the nut. Okay, let's see what's next. Okay, step 7, install the digital bias meter and secure the 440 machine screws, which I've done there. Note, the blue and white wire need to be routed towards the bias VR switch and the red and black wire towards the power supply board that was installed. Solder the blue and white wires from the bias VR switch as shown connect the red and black wires from the bias meter to the power supply board. And this is DC, so you got to make sure the black and the red are positive and negative. So that's already done. Connected the blue and white wires to where the red and green ones were on the bias switch, and I put the black and red wires to the common for the black and the positive 5 volts for the red. And now the bias meter is hooked up. Everything's connected. Now we've got to move on to step 9. Already did 9. Okay, I left the jumper big just so you can see where it's connected. The center and the bottom. Be careful not to burn some of these wires. I melted just a little bit off the casing there. So that's where it's connected at, the center and the bottom. That's what it takes. It can just be a straight wire. It could even be bare wire if you had it. I just made this a nice big one so you can see it. I'll probably just keep it like that rather than change it, but that's that. Okay, step 10. Now, the directions here want you to remove the old AC meter, cutting the wires off right at the connectors on the meter. And then this wants you to install the new digital meter using the 2 machine screws. I wouldn't install the meter yet. I took the meter out here and I left it out, and what I did is I pull one of the wires, comes from the bunch of wires from here that goes to the AC meter, and in order to get it to reach up here I just had to pull it from the bunch of wires. It was going through here, and I just pulled it out so that I got enough length to connect to the AC in here. And then the other wire that went to the meter comes right off of the on-off switch, which is like a 2-inch piece of wire, and that's not going to be long enough to reach. It's not that short, but it's definitely not long enough to reach all the way over to there. So I'm going to desolder this piece of wire off of here and put a new piece of wire and run it up here to the AC in, and then I'm going to install the AC digital bias meter. The AC digital bias meter already has 2 wires attached to it, and I'm going to connect those wires to, it says here, AC out, and that is going to power that meter and give you the correct readings on it. So the AC in from the original AC meter, 2 wires, one you should be able to get to reach to there. The other one you'll have to get a new wire, which I'll supply to you, and desolder it from the on-off switch and run it up to here. And then the new AC meter is going to have 2 wires on it. You just need to go to this one. And positive and negative, red and black, don't mean anything on the AC. So you just hook up those wires. You don't have to look down there which one's positive, which one's negative. So that's what I'm going to do. I already got the one hooked up here. I'm going to desolder this piece of wire, put a new piece of wire on up here, installed the AC meter and just took those 2 wires up. And after I did that, the bias meter and the AC meter will both be installed. And I've already installed the main digital meter in another video. So let me do that and I'll show you the completed project. Okay, now these on-off switches, the connection, the room in that hole is not very big. There's already another wire in there. So again, that's why I'm providing this top-coated wire. Where is it here? Which is stranded wire, all soldered together, so you'll have no problem getting into that small hole already sharing a wire. And you should be able to bend it through and get a really good connection on it, really good connection. It might be a little bit too much wire. You're better off, you know, burying too much wire and getting it through and cutting a little bit off before you solder, which I'm going to do. So that connection there can be a little bit tricky, but if you use the wire I provided, it shouldn't be difficult at all. Okay, so there it is, connected at the on-off switch. Connected the AC meter up to the AC out on the board. Red and black don't matter on either one of these. I just happen to have a spare black piece of wire that I used there. It could have been white, blue, anything. It wouldn't matter on the AC. So now all I need to do is put the 3 screws in, and this is a newer 539C, so it's already threaded. You don't have to use nuts. And also, the screws that I provide are plenty, very long, so there won't be any problems there. Maybe a little bit too long, but they don't interfere with anything, so they work. And if you do have to use a nut, they're a lot easier to get the nut on when they're longer. And those little tiny nuts that came with the 539Bs that have the nuts are so small because they need to fit in a tight spot because of the analog meter. There's not a lot of room between the meter. Anyways, there's not a lot of space somewhere on one of these screws. You don't have to worry about that anymore. So let me put this all together and I'll turn it on and show it to you how it works. Okay, I still have quite a bit of work to do on this tester, so I'm not going to put it all back together, but here it is. Bias meter. It's on the 50 volts. I don't have the knob on, so I'm not going to switch that. And these all the meters have been calibrated. So we're on the 50 volts. This should go up to at least 40, and it goes to 44 volts. So all these meters are calibrated when you get them. Don't mess with any of the connections or any of the adjustments rather. And 100, 99, so everything's on. This is a white main meter. You want it to be on 100. And this is an LCD meter. It's actually a backlit meter, but the backlight's not hooked up. Don't want it hooked up. It's harder to read that way. It's fine the way it is. And here's the main meter. It goes from 0 to 100. And that's, as you can see, the bias meter is working, AC meter is working, and the main meter is working too, just have nothing to test on to get a reading on it. So that's what you're going to get with all these hooked up. Really accurate readings on all 3 of these meters. Makes a nice difference. And I use all black screws, so it matches nicely, and everything's connected here with black screws. They look good and they're very accurate, and I hope this video helped. But I'm telling you, you need to read the directions. Stay with the directions and you can't go wrong.